There's been a lot of rumors and speculation circling around the sale of Warner Brothers Discovery and whether or not Zack Snyder will come back to DC and restore the Snyderverse. Now, a lot of Zack Snyder fans were hoping that whoever takes over the company will ultimately oust James Gunn and then put Zack Snyder in charge. But as things stand right now, it's looking like that's probably not a possibility. But there may still be a glimmer of hope for Snyder fans out there. And let's be honest, that's kind of all they've had up until this point as well. So I guess nothing has really changed. But before we really dive into this, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you can, leave a comment, tell me what you think about this, and also hit the like button too, because it helps me out. The Snyderverse is not coming back. Zaslav reiterates commitment to James Gunn's DCU. Now, David Zaslav, the CEO of Warner Brothers right now, maintaining that, no, James Gunn's still in charge of DC even after all this. But let's be honest, Netflix coming in, they could very well replace him and then put someone else in charge. But still, this is what he has to say. And as far as we know right now, he's still going to be the CEO over at Warner Brothers, or still be in charge of Warner Brothers even after this merger still goes through. For the last several weeks, social media has been buzzing with claims, and let's be honest, fantasy fiction, that the Warner Brothers sale might result in the DC Snyderverse coming back. The idea spread quickly across fan communities, helped along by wishful thinking by entertainment news outlets and a handful of influencers who saw opportunity in the chaos. But now that the actual facts are on the table and it's clearer than ever, the rumors never had a pulse. I wouldn't necessarily say the rumors didn't have a pulse, but they were a little bit far-fetched, even if there was a possibility. I mean, we heard a lot of information coming out about it, suggesting that there is a strong likelihood, and then Zack Snyder himself basically seemed to fan the flames of it. I think if he didn't know something himself that was going on behind the scenes, like a deal that's being worked out, he was trying to encourage it. And I think the idea from Zack Snyder is basically what we saw with the Snyder cut of Justice League, basically rally enough fan support and maybe it can make it happen. I mean, we saw that, like I said, with the Snyder cut. So I think it stands to reason people were going to try to do the same thing when it came to this. The executives directly involved in the sale have spoken publicly. Their priorities are crystal clear, and none of it, absolutely none of it, points towards reviving the defunct cinematic universe that ended years ago. Let's break it down. So David Zaslav, like I said, CEO of Warner Brothers, is saying he offered a full-throated praise of James Gunn and Peter Safran's leadership, talking about what they did with DC. The work of James and Peter, their creative vision is compelling and a great economic return. Zaslav said, there's no storytelling content that we have that provides a bigger palette than DC, and there's nobody around right now who can tell these stories with the same imagination and excitement. He continued, the DC universe is big enough and strong enough that it should be available on all platforms. There are some stories that are important to be told in theaters around the world, and some stories that are important to be told as a series. If there was ever a moment where a CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery would gesture towards a potential Snyder comeback, this was it. Instead, he doubled down on Gunn's direction. Now, he's in the middle of selling the company he's in charge of right now, so you really don't want to be in this stage and basically like, oh, good thing we can offload this stuff, because James Gunn really dropped the ball on this one and we've lost out big. So I'm glad we can just kind of pawn this off on someone else. It's like, you're not going to get any of that. He's going to try to build up his company and present it in as favorable way as possible, because you obviously don't want your buyer backing out. Now, clearly Netflix is going to get a look at the books of Warner Brothers, or get a closer look than what they present publicly. So maybe this is just nothing burger, but still, it doesn't seem like it would be a wise thing for a CEO of a company to be bad-mouthing his own company in the midst of a sale like this one. So you kind of have to take with what he's saying kind of with that context in mind. A second part of the online theory suggesting Netflix would eagerly revive the Snyderverse the moment the company gained control of Warner Brothers. The logic went something like this. Netflix likes Snyder. Netflix buys Warner Brothers. Snyderverse restored. And I even made a video talking about that, and I've mentioned it several other times in the past. And that does kind of make sense to a certain extent, that Netflix, since they had kind of like a contractual relationship with Zack Snyder, that they would want to put him back in charge since they're more familiar with him. But as this article points out, some of the stuff that he's done for them in more recent years hasn't really worked out. His Rebel Moon series, or his franchise, whatever you want to call it, didn't really pan out the way they were hoping for. It lost a ton of money for them. I know I've even covered that on this channel. And they canceled some follow-ups and some other projects with him. And then recently it was announced that any future plans for Netflix to work with him was being scrapped. Now, some people might interpret that as he was just trying to clear his schedule for coming back to DC. I don't know if that was necessarily the case, but one of the things about all this is, as time kind of went on, the idea that Netflix was going to be the one that saved Zack Snyder became less certain. There was other ideas about who or what entity would come back and restore the Snyderverse, and one of the big ones in all this was Paramount themselves. Now, the rumor surrounding that goes that Paramount was working with Saudi Arabia to help finance the sale or the buyout of Warner Brothers Discovery. Zack Snyder has that working relationship with the Saudi Arabian, so they wanted him to be back in charge to restore the Snyderverse. Not necessarily put him in charge from now on, but put Zack Snyder back in charge, allow him to kind of do some of the stuff a couple movies that he wanted to do to kind of finish things up. And then they would put someone else in charge and kind of reboot the whole thing. At least that was the belief going around. But with Paramount not being able to buy it, then now that's looking like that's probably not the case. So talking about some of the issues with James Gunn's DCU right now, how a lot of his movies and stuff didn't really resonate with audiences in the way that they were hoping for, but still, I mean, they're kind of sticking with James Gunn at least right now. But I think a lot of that also has to deal with the fact that with this sale going on, they didn't want to make any huge moves or anything like that until things kind of calm down a little bit at the company. So why the Snyderverse revival rumor had no chance, even without the executive commentary. This rumor was doomed the moment it entered the discourse for a few simple reasons. For starters, most DCEU actors have moved on. Contracts expired years ago. Schedules changed for some actors, expressed openly that they finished. The logical amount alone makes a revival impractical. And yeah, that was always going to be kind of a long shot, but supposedly some of that, or most of the actors were still on board. The only one that, or the only two actors that were kind of flaky was Ezra Miller. They said there was pretty much no chance he was coming back, which I think most people are okay with. Ben Affleck, he was kind of wishy-washy about it. Basically, it seemed like he could have been persuaded to come back, given the right direction, but we'll never know. However, there is still some glimmer of hope, like I said at the start, so don't get too down in the dumps just yet if you're a fan of Zack Snyder, because Paramount is attempting to kind of counter Netflix's offer with their own deal. So Netflix bid $82.7 billion for Warner Brothers Discovery. Paramount is upping their bid, saying that they're willing to pay $108.4 billion. And Paramount has also alleged that they have less regulatory issues, so there's more of a likelihood that the deal could actually go through. And I don't know what's going to happen, because according to filings, they actually offered a higher bid than Netflix prior to Warner Brothers accepting Netflix's bid. So then could be some issues there, because Warner Brothers has a fiduciary duty to their shareholders to try to make the most amount of money possible. So if they decided to pass up on the bigger bid in favor of Netflix for some other unknown reasons, maybe Zaslav is getting some other deal under the table from Netflix. We don't know just yet, but there could be an investigation under that, in addition to the regulatory investigation to see whether or not this deal can actually go through. I don't know exactly how things will work out in this whole arrangement. One of the things, part of Netflix's deal that I do know of, is that they're pledging $5 billion kind of if this deal ultimately falls through. And I'm not saying like whether Warner Brothers backs out on the deal, but if some other thing like the regulatory agencies get involved and say that the deal can't go through, then Warner Brothers can still get the $5 billion. So maybe I'm wrong here and this isn't how it works, but what might actually be going down is Warner Brothers was expecting the deal with Netflix to ultimately fall through. The regulators won't allow it to happen. So they're saying like, okay, Netflix is bidding this much, offering $5 billion guarantee. Paramount is bidding this much, offering more money, but no guarantee. So what Warner Brothers is deciding to do is saying like, we think the regulators will not allow the Netflix deal to go through. So let's just say we're accepting this one. Then when it falls through, we collect the $5 billion and then get the deal from Paramount. I don't know if that's going to happen. I'm not a business person, so maybe I'm missing something here, and that actually can't actually go through the way I explained it there. But that does seem like a possibility there. And if that's the case, whether or not Paramount will restore the Snyderverse remains to be seen. But let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. And also, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with the latest entertainment news. And don't forget to hit the like button and share this video out there because it helps out with the channel. Thank you.